Well, guys, I've got the intro today. I have the floor. It's Friday. You know what that means? It's time for another Tech Talk. Let's mix things up a little bit. Dan, have you got a topic for us today?
Well, indeed, Mike, I have a really great topic, and you will probably be wondering, why are we covering this again? I know you guys thinking that it's not the case. Listen, hear me out. So, be talking about combos today, but not the kind of combos that you have in your head. What do you have in your head? I don't know, but kind of combo I'm talking about today is grid combos. Because standardly we're talking about doubles versus singles, or different types of combinations together or different shapes, but we're talking about grid combos. I'll give you an example. The 30-40 rocks, single or a double mixed with a 50-60 or a 60-80.
Why is it so, Dan?
Why?
Why? Well, I'd like to know too.
I feel as confused as Josh looks.
Look, I can see some theory behind it, but I think it's for a very special little niche, tiny market.
Right.
What do you think, Josh? Give us some more, because I've had this in my head for so long. I've asked him so many questions about it, and he said this is Tech Talk worthy. So hit me up. Hit us up.
Well, I saw a picture on Insta the other week of a hard set of different grit combos. What was the go with that one?
Okay, all right. I'll expand. Okay, so concrete's not so different to humans, right? Whoever goes all the way through a Macca's drive-through and just goes, "I'll have 3 Big Macs, thank you. No fries, no big shake, nothing else. Just 3 Big Macs, please." Who does that? Any of you guys? Oh, okay, Mike might do that. Should have closed my line.
Hey, I'm the only one who didn't put my hand up. Only because it's so heavy and fat, I couldn't get it up.
Well, what makes you think a concrete floor is so different? It doesn't want to eat the same 3 things, the same 3 items all day long. Macca's drive-through, you get all the same. You don't get all the same stuff. Well, concrete's kind of the same as us. It doesn't like the same combination. It doesn't like the same one thing the whole time, right? It likes to have a bit of variety, okay? So you've probably got a bit more persuasion if you come to it with a few different types of things. We know that all concretes aren't the same and all materials aren't the same. And in many cases, we need to try and appeal to many types of materials. I've got a question for you guys. So when we're talking about combinations, which one to you looks sharper? This one or this one?
That one.
The second one.
The second one, the finger or the fist? All right. The finger's sharper than the fist, right? Now, if the fist is a 0 grit or a 6 grit diamond blown up to make it look much bigger, and the finger is our 30-40, which one's going to cut better?
The sharper one.
The sharper one, right? Now, we often look at the grits and go, yeah, I want that 6 grit or that 0 grit because that's really, really going to cut. Now, the types of concrete that we typically have difficulty cutting are the really hard or really dense ones, okay? So ones that have been really, really well burnt and so have a really mechanically dense surface, or ones that have a really hard aggregate in them that's hard for us to actually cut through. Now, if we approach those with that big 6 grit, it's not going to do much because it's actually quite blunt. And what happens to a diamond tool when the actual diamond particles get really hot? It gets really flat, doesn't it? That's right. It glazes over, or it gets very, very hot, and it just doesn't operate. Right? It's not inside of its temperature parameter. If we hit it with something a lot sharper, what's it going to do?
It's gonna keep cutting.
It'll keep cutting. That's right. So we know that the 30 grit is a lot sharper, and so it deals with the harder and more dense materials better, simply because it's sharper, which is one aspect of the combo, right? The other thing that we do know about it is that 30 doesn't really cut very, very deeply, and if we want to take up lots of material, well, what's our next go-to? We want to go to something that's got a larger segment or not larger segment, a larger particle, because per revolution on a soft concrete or a softer material, that larger particle is actually going to go deeper per revolution if you've got enough weight behind that. So what we do is we combine the two together. And the reason why we do that is if we've got our 30 grit, the sharp one, scratching up the surface, and we've got the 6 grit behind it, what's going to happen is that when the 30 grit makes a texture, the 6 grit's got something to bite into, and it can dig deeper than what the 30 grit can. So therefore, we're accelerating the actual cutting because they each complement each other. So without that texture in the surface from the 30 grit, that 6 grit just glazes over and doesn't cut. But if we put the profile there or the texture in front of it, it cuts and cuts very effectively. And that's why we have seen a little bit more of these combinations coming into social media and being posted, is because it's something that we've been promoting for quite some time, and now you're starting to see it coming out.
Moving on from that step, we've done what you've just said.
Yeah.
Then am I going to a full set of 30s? Just to, like, is that an additional step, or is that instead of, is that your first cut? Or would that be considered an additional step? So then you want to go over that with a full set of 30s, get a nice scratch, or you're going to move straight into 50s?
Yeah, good question, Mike. The question is really going to be, if I combine those two together, how harsh is that going to be?
Yeah.
Because don't forget, we've still got a floor that's really, really hard and very dense, and we're using, a much bigger particle. All right, it's still not going to cut to its full potential. Now, if we used a 6 grit on a really soft concrete or an 11 compound, it would cut really, really deep. And I'm not saying for a moment actually or recommending that you go out and use a 6 grit in a really, really hard concrete application. You're probably going to be better off using a 16, something that's a bit closer to the 30, because again, it's a bit sharper than that full fist, but it's going to have more power to go deeper, but it's going to be a little bit more efficient just because it's a sharper product to begin with. So 30, 40 and a 16 together is not going to give you a 30, 40 grit type of finish, and it's not going to give you a 16 grit type of finish either. It's going to be sitting somewhere in between. So let's say it's going to end up being a 22 or 22 grit or something like that, which is not that big of a jump for a 50 grit. So if you want to go into a second cut after that, you can go straight into it. Remember, also,
so you can go into a 50-60 as opposed to using a 60-80.
Yeah. Going to a 60-80 is probably going to be too big of a jump anyhow, because we already know that the concrete is very, very hard, and that 60-80 has got a really high content and diamond particles in it. And although they're sharper, they take up a lot more of the surface area, so therefore they generate a lot more heat as well. That's why that 50-60 works so well.
So I have a good question for you, Josh.
Yes.
Let's say, because we do a full exposure floor, I want to skip a step, Josh. I don't want to do 50-60s. I want to do 30-40s mixed with 50-60s and jump straight into grout. I'm going to cut the 60s out altogether. Will that work?
Will that work? Well, it will work in some applications, Dan. It will work in some applications, particularly with soft or medium concrete. You could do a combination like that. Not going to say come out and recommend it, but yes, it is possible. Let's say, for argument's sake, that we're doing a hit and miss type of grind, so we don't need to take a lot of material off. But at the moment, that floor has got adhesive on it from doing the vinyl's been removed, and the floor's got adhesive on it. We got to do a hit and miss grind or minimum grind and polish. You could do a combination like that, which that 30-40 grit would help to remove the adhesive, and the 50 obviously leaves a much smoother profile. It's going to take you that one pass probably 20 to 30% slower, but it's still going to be faster than doing 2 passes before doing a grout. In an application like that, yes, you can combine your 30-40s with a 50-60, so half and half on there, do that pass, remove the adhesive and expose a small amount of aggregate and refine the scratch pattern a little, and then go straight into a GRT. Now, a GRT would be my recommendation there, because it's got that lower grit and the higher grit in it, right? So that already runs a combo to get a much smoother profile, but it's got that lower grit that's going to help bridge the gap in that more gnarly scratch pattern that's not quite 50-60.
So like the question is, are the GRTs going to be, because we're not going to get a true 30-40 scratch, right? Because I mentioned before when we started talking about these different combos, obviously we have a completely different scratch pattern now. It's not a full 30-40, it's not a full 50-60 or 60-80. We now have a combination grid.
Like a hybrid scratch.
Yeah, a hybrid scratch that not probably a lot of people have worked with yet, I'm guessing, or some maybe have. Will the GRTs be powerful enough to cut those scratches out, do you think?
Well, you know, Mike said it's a hybrid scratch, so you just have to make sure that your GRTs are fully charged so they have the power to do that, Daniel. Yes, they look, in most cases, because you're leaving say we've got 30-40 and we've got 50-60 together, you're probably going to end up with something close to a 50 scratch pattern or profile, right? And so we've got 100 in the at the lower end of the GRT. Transitioning from that combo, that 30-40, 50-60 combo into a GRT on medium concrete is not going to be that hard. On very hard concrete, might be touch and go.
Nice.
But remember, that's why we do samples.
No, I was just saying, depending on the application, I've seen instances where guys have gone from 30 rocks all the way to a GRT, but you got to know what you're looking at, and it's not like a solution which will work all the time. So depending on what you're doing, there are jumps that you can do to save you time, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're doing a fully mechanical floor.
What you're saying is know your tools.
Absolutely. Know your tools.
Do a sample.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting one because, it's always like understanding the purpose of that. To be honest, just to add my last bit, a little bit of in there, like coming back to that combo, the 30-40 with the 50-60, I can see that work also. So there's a lot of guys doing epoxy, for example, right? They need a nice decent scratch pattern there ready for coating. And I can see a 30-40 mixed with a 50-60 work great in that because you're going to have sufficient removal. It's not like too coarse of a scratch pattern because 30-40 might be too coarse sometimes. I could see that work.
Certainly can. So it's like you say, Daniel, it's understanding the limitations of your tooling and of the material that you're working on and experimenting and getting the best out of both.
And just to throw a spanner on the works, let me ask this question. If you were doing a 30-40 and a 50-60 combo, should one particular segment versus another segment be a single or a double or you know what I mean? Should the lower grit be a single and the high grit be a double, or should they all be doubles? Or
look, just in that scenario, it's most likely going to be that the best combination is a single 30 and a 50-60 anyhow. But I wouldn't say specifically on every project that's going to be the case.
But doubles or single segments doesn't.
It's really going to come down to weight. Really going to come down to where the emphasis needs to lie. So if you need more weight behind that 30-40, then you'll have less of them under the machine.
Yep.
But if it's a relatively soft surface and you're just trying to increase the speed at which it's all happening, then you could have that full set of doubles all the way around. So the double 30s and the double 50s.
So just fall back to that standard train of thought. Yep. I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head. What have you got?
30-50 GRT, 30-50 GRT.
Yep.
One pass, densify into polishing, right?
For crying out loud.
It's controversial.
I don't know who's upsetting me more. Oh, I'm gone.
God.
It's gone.
We might wrap things up there, guys.
Well, Josh is sick of us, so Mikey, take it away. Juicy Mike.
Well, that's it, guys. Well, that's it. Juicy Mike. That's not going to stick. Nice one, guys. Definitely an interesting one. I think when we had our bit of a pre-chat that I said it's going to be a good one because I didn't know much about it, which I certainly feel like I've learned a bit more. And obviously, we're not saying to everyone, I guess, run out and start doing this sort of thing, but certainly a bit of food for thought. And if you want a bit more further discussion, then give us a shout or, put a comment or a question below. Certainly, and if you've run any combos that you want to share or anything like that, it'd be really interesting to see. So, good topic, guys. It is Friday. Let's go and get a cold one and enjoy the weekend.
Nice one. Thanks, boys.
See you guys. Thanks.
Cheers, mate. See you guys.